They sold you the lie that letting go is a gentle act. They told you detachment is like releasing a balloon into the sky and watching it rise softly. But the truth no one tells you is that real detachment is an amputation. It's the surgical act of cutting off a part of you that's gangrenous, but which you insist on calling who I am. Letting go isn't the soft fall of a leaf onto a lake. It's the violent snap of a rope breaking under extreme tension. The ego won't leave because you asked nicely. It needs to be assassinated. And yes, there will be blood, there will be pain, there will be the terror of the void. Right now you have a choice. Close this and return to the comfort that's killing you in slow motion, or discover why the violence of detachment is the only real door to freedom. Most will choose anesthesia. If you stayed, it's because something in you already knows that your prison has the exact shape of the things you refuse to release. This content does not exist to calm you. There are no promises here of painless processes, gentle detachment, or techniques that will make you feel good while you liberate yourself. What you'll encounter is the brutal structure behind real transformation. The kind the spiritual marketplace hides because it frightens, because it demands too much, because it exposes the uncomfortable truth. You are trapped because you choose to be trapped every single day. The rope is in your hand. The key is in your pocket, and you pretend neither exists because freedom without definition is more terrifying than captivity with identity. Strategic Buddhism is not a comfort philosophy. It's controlled demolition engineering of the ego. Letting go is not an act of peaceful surrender. It's sabotage, the deliberate cutting of the ropes that bind you to the matrix of false identity. When Siddhartha abandoned the palace, he didn't just leave for a spiritual walk. He executed a radical amputation of everything that defined him. Status, family, security, guaranteed future. He committed biographical suicide to discover what remains when every external marker of self is removed. What most people call finding themselves is actually the violent process of losing every false self they've constructed. Real detachment hurts like tearing off your own skin because the ego is a parasite that has fused with the host. It's not something external you wear, it's something that grew inside you and now pulses with your blood. Removing a belief, an emotional addiction, an identity narrative isn't meditation. It's surgery without anesthesia. The scalpel goes in cold, the cut is clean, and you are awake for every second of it, watching parts of yourself that you thought were essential being removed and discarded. If this sounds extreme, it's because liberation is extreme. The middle path is not a compromise between bondage and freedom. It's the razor's edge between the two, and only those willing to bleed walk it. If your spiritual practice doesn't cause you discomfort, you're not practicing Buddhism. You're practicing self-medication. True Dharma is a scalpel that cuts illusions. It doesn't ask permission. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It doesn't offer pain management, and surgeries without anesthesia are by definition violent. The question is whether you have the sovereignty to hold the knife, or whether you'll spend your life seeking gentler methods that never actually cut through. The violence of letting go is not cruelty, it's precision. It's the recognition that the tumor cannot be removed with positive thinking, that the chain cannot be dissolved with gratitude, that the prison cannot be escaped by redecorating the cell. The only way out is through the surgical removal of everything you think you are. What remains after that operation is what you actually are, and it has been waiting beneath the accumulated identity garbage your entire life. Modern spirituality sold detachment as a gentle process of letting flow. They taught you that all it takes is a deep breath, lighting incense, and whispering positive affirmations for attachments to dissolve like sugar in water. This is the lie that keeps you trapped while making you feel you're evolving. The marketplace of spiritual comfort has built an empire on this fiction because the truth would bankrupt their business model overnight. They need you to believe that transformation is painless, that you can shed your identity like a snake sheds skin, effortlessly, naturally, without the raw terror of not knowing who you'll be on the other side. But every person who has genuinely let go of something that defined them knows the truth. There was blood, there was panic, there was the visceral sensation of internal dismemberment. The truth is that real detachment is an act of internal violence against your comfort zone. It requires aggressive willpower to cut what defines you. You're not releasing anything. You're assassinating the version of you that fed on that problem, that resentment, that status, that victim narrative. This isn't poetry or metaphor. It's the surgical reality of consciousness work. When you truly sever ties with an identity structure, the ego experiences it as literal death because, in functional terms, it is. The neural pathways that fire together to create you are being deliberately starved of the stimulus that kept them alive. Buddhist detachment isn't about being peaceful while holding the knife. It's about having the sovereignty to plunge it in, despite every survival instinct screaming at you to stop. Consider Consider the person who defines themselves entirely through their trauma. "I am broken because of what happened to me" becomes the load-bearing wall of their psychological architecture. To let go of that trauma isn't just processing an emotion, it's demolishing the entire structure of self-understanding they've built over decades. Who are they without the story of how they were damaged? What justifies their limitations if not their biographical fiction? The ego will fight this amputation with every weapon it has: depression, anxiety, physical illness, relationship sabotage, anything to prove that you still need the thing you're trying to release. This is why gentle approaches fail. They're bringing a feather to a gunfight against a parasite that has fused itself to your consciousness. The market knows that if they told you detachment is amputation, nobody would buy. It's easier to sell the illusion that you can evolve without pain, grow without sacrifice, transform without dying. But every real metamorphosis requires the previous form to be destroyed. The butterfly doesn't gently release the caterpillar. The caterpillar dissolves into biological soup inside the cocoon before reconstructing itself. There's no consciousness in that cocoon during the dissolution. There's only organic material being violently reorganized. Your ego death follows the same principle. The person you are now must be chemically broken down before the person you're becoming can take form. And you want to do this with breathing exercises and gratitude journals? The violence of letting go reveals itself most clearly in the moment just before the cut. Your hand is on the cord. You know intellectually that this attachment is killing you. This relationship, this identity, this need for validation, this story about who you are. But between knowing and cutting lies the abyss of self-annihilation. To cut the cord is to admit that you've been wrong about yourself, that the thing you defended as essential was actually the cage. It's to stand naked before reality, without the costume of your chosen identity. Most people live and die at this edge, hand on the cord, telling themselves they're working on it, while the attachment drains their life force year after year. The few who cut discover something the spiritual market will never tell you. On the other side of that violence is not peace, but power, the diamond consciousness forged under pressure that nothing can break. But to get there, you first have to be willing to bleed. If you seek Buddhism as a technique to feel better, you're using the wrong tool. The Dharma is not a blanket, it's a blade. Its function is not to warm, but to cut away what's preventing you from seeing reality as it is. The moment you approach Buddhist practice, hoping for emotional relief, you've already converted a surgical instrument into a comfort object. This is why most Western Buddhism has devolved into mindfulness apps and corporate stress management. The scalpel has been filed down into a spoon, safe enough to sell but too dull to perform the operation. The original teachings weren't designed to help you relax into your suffering. They were designed to annihilate the mechanism that produces suffering in the first place. But annihilation doesn't market well to people seeking wellness. Comfort is the anesthesia that prevents you from perceiving that you're chained. When your life is comfortable, you don't question, you don't investigate, you don't operate. The system is designed to keep you in a state of sufficient comfort so you never fully wake up. Think about it. Every major spiritual breakthrough in history happened during crisis, not comfort. Siddhartha left the palace when he encountered death and suffering, not when he was enjoying the dances and the feast. Transformation requires the friction of dukkha, the fundamental unsatisfactoriness of conditioned existence, rubbing against your consciousness until the illusion catches fire. Comfort is the water the system pours on that fire to keep you sedated. The physics of comfort operates on a simple principle. What you don't use, you lose. Comfort is not rest, it's atrophy. Every time you choose the path of least resistance, you're training your consciousness to weaken. The mental muscle that enables hard lucidity only develops under load. Without the weight of discomfort, consciousness remains flaccid, incapable of bearing naked truth when it finally appears. This is why people collapse under relatively minor adversity. Their consciousness has been kept in such a state of perpetual comfort that it has no structural integrity. The person who has never deliberately chosen discomfort is like someone who has never exercised trying to run a marathon. The body and the mind can't do what it hasn't been trained to do. The true meaning of dukkha is not just suffering in the sense of physical pain or sadness. It's the inherent tension of trying to keep fixed a reality that is fluid. It's the friction between what you want to be and what is. Buddhism doesn't promise to eliminate dukkha by offering comfort. It proposes to eliminate dukkha by cutting the root of resistance. And that root is the ego that insists on having preferences. Every I want, every it should be, every why me is the ego demanding that reality conform to its script. The Dharma, a scalpel, cuts through this demand, not by fulfilling it, but by removing the demander. No ego demanding permanence means no suffering when impermanence reveals itself. No ego demanding pleasure means no suffering when pain arrives. This isn't resignation, it's surgical precision. Most people encounter Buddhism during crisis and use it as emergency anesthesia, chanting to feel calm, meditating to escape anxiety, reading sutras to avoid facing what's actually broken. They mistake the temporary relief for the cure. But the Dharma was never meant to numb you. It was meant to wake you up so completely that you can perform surgery on your own consciousness while fully alert. The Buddha didn't teach stress management. He taught ego assassination. He didn't offer coping strategies. He offered liberation through the violent dismantling of the self-structure that produces suffering. If your Buddhist practice makes you feel good, you're doing maintenance on your prison cell, not digging the escape tunnel. The scalpel is in your hand. The question is whether you have the sovereignty to cut into your own flesh, or whether you'll keep using it to butter your spiritual comfort food. The first act of liberating violence is to stop telling yourself the story of who I am based on what happened to me. Your biography is not you. It's just the script the ego wrote to justify its limitations and keep you in a known role. Every time you introduce yourself through your past, your trauma, your achievements, your identity markers, you're not describing reality. You're reciting lines from a play you didn't even consciously write. The narrative, I am this way because my father, or I can't do that because in my childhood, is not an explanation. It's a life sentence you keep re-signing every time you speak it. The past has no power except the power you grant it by treating it as if it defines the present. You use your traumas as a blanket. They protect you from total responsibility. I am like this because my father left. I can't trust because I was betrayed. I deserve compassion because I suffered. Each of these sentences is a rope tying you to the prison of fixed identity. The victim narrative is the most seductive of all ego structures because it comes with built-in justification for limitation and a steady supply of external validation. People will comfort you, excuse you, make space for your dysfunction, but what they're actually doing is helping you maintain the cage. The moment you stop being defined by what was done to you, you become terrifyingly free and terrifyingly responsible. Most people prefer the warm prison of victimhood to the cold sovereignty of self-authorship. Letting go of this story leaves you naked before reality. It's the destruction of your fictional biography. Without it, you have no more excuses, no more justifications. You're forced to operate only with what you are now, not with what you were or what was done to you. This is biographical amputation, and like all amputations, it's violent. The phantom limb will remain. You'll still feel the narrative trying to assert itself, the old story reaching for the microphone whenever you face difficulty. But each time you refuse to speak it, each time you cut the sentence before it completes, you're starving that neural pathway. Eventually, the phantom fades. Eventually, you discover you can function, better actually, without the story you thought was your spine. The technique here is surgical. Every time you begin a sentence with "I am this way because," cut the sentence. Don't complete it. Let silence enter. That silence is the void where your new operation begins. You are not your history. You are the space where histories happen and die. This isn't about denying that events occurred. Trauma is real, abuse is real, damage is real. But the story you've built around those events, the identity you've constructed from that damage, the limitations you've accepted as permanent, those are fiction. The event was data. The story is the ego's interpretation of that data, designed to maintain control by making you believe you're too broken to be sovereign. Most spiritual teachings will tell you to heal your past, to integrate your trauma, to honor your story. But what if the story itself is the wound that won't close? What if every time you tell it, you're reopening the cut? Sever ties with the "I was" doesn't mean pretending nothing happened. It means refusing to let what happened define what you're capable of now. It means operating as if you were born this morning in this body, with no past to justify weakness, no biography to excuse limitation. The ego will scream that this is denial, that you're bypassing, that you're being irresponsible. But the ego's job is to maintain the known, and the known is the cage. The moment you execute your biographical fiction, you step into the terrifying freedom of being no one, which is the only position from which you can become anyone. The ego survives through the simple mechanism of I like and I don't like. Each preference is a rope. Each I wish it were different is a vote to remain in prison. The second act of violence is to systematically act against your immediate preferences. This isn't masochism, it's sovereignty training. When you want the sweet, you don't eat it. When you want rest, you remain standing. When the ego screams for pleasure or relief, you deny it. Not out out of moral punishment, but because you're proving to the system that consciousness holds sovereignty, not biological impulses. Every time you override a conditioned preference, you're debugging a line of external control code that was written into you without your permission. This is where most people fail, because they confuse spiritual practice with self-improvement. Self-improvement says, I will resist this cookie because I want to be healthier. That's still the ego, just a future-oriented ego trading present pleasure for future vanity. Preference sabotage says, I will not eat this cookie to prove that the wanting has no authority over the choosing. The distinction is everything. One is the ego negotiating with itself. The other is consciousness establishing dominance over the ego. When you act against preference purely as an exercise in sovereignty, you're not building willpower. You're installing a new operating system where impulse is downgraded from commander to messenger. The impulse can report what it wants, but it no longer gets to decide. You betray your lesser self to save your sovereignty. The ego will interpret this as cruelty. It will tell you you're being harsh, that life is meant to be enjoyed, that you're missing the point of existence. But what you're actually doing is evicting a parasite that's been controlling the house. Every time you act against a conditioned preference, you're deleting a line of external control code. The system, family, culture, biology, marketing, programmed you with thousands of automatic preferences designed to make you predictable, manageable, profitable, hot over cold, sweet over bitter, comfort over challenge, entertainment over silence. Each preference is a lever they can pull. Strategic Buddhism removes the levers one by one through deliberate betrayal of what the conditioned self wants. The simplest example, when you want hot water and choose cold, you're practicing sever ties with thermal comfort. It seems insignificant, but the impact is structural. You're informing the nervous system that bodily sensations no longer have veto power over your decisions. This is real-time armor installation. The cold water hitting your skin triggers the exact same panic response as social rejection, financial loss, or physical threat. It's all just the ego screaming, wrong, stop, danger. When you stand in that cold water and observe the panic without obeying it, you're training the most valuable skill consciousness can possess, the ability to feel something fully and choose something different anyway. This is the gap between stimulus and response where all freedom lives. Most people spend their entire lives being owned by their preferences. They don't choose their days. Their conditioned likes and dislikes choose for them. Wake up tired, drink coffee, feel bored, scroll phone, feel lonely, send message, feel uncomfortable, adjust environment. Every action is the ego pulling a lever it installed in childhood. Preference sabotage isn't about becoming ascetic or joyless. It's about proving to yourself that you can feel the pull and not obey. Once you know you can override any preference, preference loses its grip. You can still enjoy the sweet when you choose it, but you're no longer a slave begging for sugar. You're sovereign, and sovereignty means the final say belongs to consciousness, not to the biological puppet master pulling strings through desire and aversion. The third and deepest act is letting go of the very idea that you are someone special or separate from the whole. This is the final cut, not just of narrative or preferences, but of the notion itself that there exists a solid, permanent I at the center of your experience. Everything prior was preparation for this. The biographical execution cleared the story. Preference sabotage weakened the ego's control systems, and now you face the ultimate amputation, the removal of the belief in a separate self. This is where most spiritual seekers turn back, because what lies beyond this threshold is not enlightenment as they imagined it, but the terrifying recognition that there's nobody home to become enlightened. When you arrive here, you confront the abyss, the direct perception that at the core of everything there's no one in residence. There are just processes occurring, thoughts arising, sensations flowing, but no fixed you commanding the show. The breath breathes itself, thoughts think themselves, decisions emerge from a field of causes you didn't consciously orchestrate. What you've been calling I is just a linguistic convention, a grammatical habit the brain uses to organize experience, but it has no more inherent reality than the character in a dream believes they exist when you wake up. This isn't philosophy or poetry. This is what direct observation reveals when you strip away the narrative overlay. The observer you thought you were observing with doesn't exist. There's only observing. This is the moment the ego enters total panic. It interprets this perception as death, and in a way it is. The identity you spent decades constructing and defending is being dismantled in real time. The terror is proportional to the attachment. The more you believed you were someone, the more violent this dissolution feels. People who touch this void unprepared often experience it as psychosis, depersonalization, existential crisis. Their entire reality structure is predicated on the existence of a stable self, and when that self is revealed as fiction, the architecture collapses. This is why traditional Buddhist training moved slowly, building the capacity to witness self-dissolution without fracturing. The void doesn't care if you're ready, but sovereignty means having the structural integrity to stand in the abyss and keep functioning. On the other side of panic lies the most radical liberation possible. If there's no I to protect, there's nothing to lose. If there's no fixed identity, there's no fear of humiliation. If there's no center, there's no pressure point the system can squeeze. You become operational emptiness, untouchable, undisturbable, sovereign. This isn't nihilism, where nothing matters because everything is meaningless. This is the recognition that everything matters precisely because there's no separate self to impose its agenda on reality. Without the ego filtering every experience through, how does this affect me? You can finally respond to what's actually happening instead of to your narrative about what's happening. The ego death that terrifies most people is the birth of true responsibility, the ability to respond to reality directly, without the intermediary of self-concern distorting every perception. Most spiritual paths promise to strengthen or purify or expand the self. Strategic Buddhism does the opposite. It executes the self and discovers what remains when the fiction dissolves. What remains isn't nothing, it's everything. Consciousness without the limiting filter of my consciousness. Awareness without the possessive claim of my awareness. Life living itself through this body, this moment, this action, with no one taking credit or seeking validation. The ego will fight this until the final breath because its existence depends on you believing in its existence. But once you've seen through the trick, once you've inhabited the void, and discovered it's not death but liberation, you can never again be controlled by the threat of losing what you never were. This is Vajra consciousness, unbreakable because there's nothing there to break. Sabotage is not a slow process, it's a clean cut. It's the deliberate amputation of the 5 ropes that bind you to the matrix of false identity. Each rope represents an area where the ego maintains control through comfort, validation, or hope. This isn't theory to contemplate, it's a surgical protocol to apply. Most people spend years in therapy trying to understand their chains. Sabotage takes a different approach. Stop analyzing the rope and cut it. Understanding why you're attached doesn't free you, it just makes you an expert on your own imprisonment. The protocol exists because consciousness needs concrete action, not more insight about why action is needed. The first rope is the compulsive need to be understood. Every time you explain yourself, justify your choices, or seek approval, you're feeding the parasite. The cut. Today, when someone questions or judges you, don't respond. Let them think whatever they want. Feel the discomfort of the ego wanting to defend itself and let it burn in silence. This isn't about being passive or weak. It's about recognizing that your sovereignty doesn't require external validation to function. The moment you need others to understand you, you've handed them the remote control to your internal state. When someone misunderstands you and you don't correct them, you're practicing the most advanced form of freedom, not caring what story plays in someone else's mind about who you are. The second rope is the habit of checking notifications or scrolling feeds as a Pavlovian reflex. The cut, delete or hide the app that most drains your attention for the next 24 hours. No goodbyes, no, I'll be back tomorrow. Sabotage is abrupt. You cut the data stream that feeds your reactivity. Most people don't realize they're not using social media. Social media is using them. Every scroll is a little hit of dopamine, every notification a little test of whether you exist in someone else's awareness. The ego has outsourced its sense of reality to how many people liked your post. When you cut this cord, even for a day, you'll feel the phantom limb, the compulsive reach for the phone, the anxiety about what you're missing. Good, that's the parasite dying. The third rope consists of phrases that begin with, I am this way, I've always struggled with, my story is. The cut. Identify your favorite weakness narrative and decide it died today. Operate as if you were just born in this body, with no past. This is biographical execution applied moment to moment. When you catch yourself about to explain your limitation through your history, stop mid-sentence. The silence that follows is the void where new operation begins. You're not healing your past self. You're refusing to let it occupy the present. Every time you invoke your biography, biography to explain why you can't, you're casting a vote for permanent limitation. Sever ties with the past isn't denial, it's refusing to let the dead govern the living. The fourth rope is that habit of seeking sugar, extra coffee, or perfect temperature the moment you feel mild discomfort. The cut. Identify your physical consolation of the day and deny it. If you want the sweet, don't eat it. If you want rest, remain standing. You're proving that consciousness holds sovereignty, not impulses. This is where people reveal whether they're serious about liberation or just shopping for better coping mechanisms. The ego will offer 1,000 justifications. I need energy. I deserve comfort. Life is short. All true, also irrelevant. The point isn't to suffer pointlessly. It's to prove you can feel discomfort and choose differently. Once you know you can override any physical preference, the body loses its veto power over your decisions. The fifth rope is the idea that you'll apply rigor when the situation calms down or when you have time. The cut. Understand there is no ideal scenario. The ideal scenario is the chaos where you find yourself now. Apply rigor in the middle of crisis. Kill the hope for a better moment. This is spiritual procrastination disguised as wisdom. I'll meditate when I'm less stressed. I'll practice detachment when my life stabilizes. I'll do the work when I have space. Meanwhile, years pass and the perfect conditions never arrive because perfect conditions don't exist. The chaos is the training ground. The crisis is the curriculum. If you can't practice sovereignty here, in this mess, you won't practice it anywhere. Sever ties with the fantasy of a future where you'll finally be ready. You're as ready as you'll ever be, which is to say, not ready at all. Cut anyway. When you apply sever ties, you don't just cut a habit, you open a vacuum in your existence. The ego hates the void. The moment the rope snaps, your mind will enter panic mode and attempt to fill that space with noise, regret, or new distraction. This is the critical window where most people fail. They cut the cord successfully, feel the liberation for 30 seconds, then immediately grab a different rope because the emptiness is unbearable. The post-cut silence protocol is what guarantees you don't replace one chain with another. It's the technique for stabilizing hard lucidity in the middle of nothing. Immediately after the cut, adrenaline spikes. The ego will generate 1,000 reasons to go back or just check one last time. Action. Remain motionless. Don't talk about what you did. Don't post about it. Don't seek validation for your discipline. Silence is the compression chamber where your new strength is forged. The moment you announce, I deleted Instagram, or I cut ties with toxic people, you've converted an internal operation into external performance. You're not actually free, you're just performing freedom for an audience. Real sever ties happens in silence because it's not about being seen doing the work. It's about the work rewiring your internal architecture where no one is watching. Like an amputee who still feels the leg they lost, you'll feel the presence of what you cut. The brain will search for the stimulus that's no longer there. The hand reaches for the phone that isn't in your pocket. The mind composes the explanation for someone who isn't asking. The body craves the comfort you denied it. Action. Observe the impulse arising like a wave. Don't fight it, just watch it crash on the shore of your silence. This is phantom limb observation. The impulse has no power except the power you give it by obeying. When you see it as just another sensation arising in consciousness, no more significant than an itch or a passing thought, it loses its command authority. The craving doesn't disappear, but it stops being able to move your hand. The biggest mistake is trying to be productive or positive immediately after brutal detachment. This is just the ego changing masks. You cut one addiction, and within hours, you're manic about a new project, a new routine, a new obsession. This is displacement, not liberation. Action. Remain empty as long as possible. Don't seek a new hobby, new book, new fixation. Learn to sit in the void. Most people are so terrified of emptiness that they'd rather be in pain than in nothing. But emptiness is not absence, it's potential. It's the space where you're not being defined by external stimuli, not reacting to inputs, not filling time to avoid confronting the fact that you don't know who you are without your distractions. When you discover you can survive without anything to cling to, you become invincible. Not invincible in the sense that nothing can hurt you, invincible in the sense that nothing can control you. Pain can arrive, loss can happen, failure can manifest, and none of it can touch your core because your core isn't built on anything that can be taken away. This is what the post-cut silence protocol installs: the capacity to exist in pure presence, without narrative, without preference, without the need for the next thing to complete you. The void you're learning to inhabit isn't empty in the depressing sense, it's empty in the sovereign sense. Nothing fills it because nothing needs to. You are complete in your incompleteness, sovereign in your uncertainty, free precisely because you've stopped trying to be anything at all. Suffering is not an error in the design. It's the only fuel fuel potent enough to propel you to sovereignty. The pain you feel didn't arrive to destroy you. It came to assassinate the illusion that you need the world to be intact. Every spiritual marketplace will sell you techniques to reduce suffering, manage suffering, cope with suffering. Strategic Buddhism offers something different. Use suffering as the raw material for consciousness transformation. The formula is simple. Suffering, amban kan pain x resistance. Pain is the raw data of reality. Resistance is the ego saying, this shouldn't be happening. Buddhism beyond comfort teaches you to reduce resistance to zero. Even in situations of extreme pain, your suffering remains zero because you've stopped arguing with what is. Think of humiliation. The ego's first response is either revenge or hiding. It wants to strike back or disappear. The rigor applies sabotage with others' opinions. The result? Internal authority. You stop needing external validation to know your value. Someone mocks you, criticizes you, dismisses you, and you feel it land. You acknowledge the sensation, but it has no power to move you because you're not anchored in their perception. This isn't pretending you don't care. It's the genuine recognition that their opinion is just data, not verdict. When humiliation can't humiliate you because there's no ego defending a reputation, you've transmuted that poison into the medicine of sovereignty. Consider solitude. The ego responds to isolation with distraction or neediness. It scrolls, it messages, it fills the silence with anything to avoid the confrontation with itself. The rigor inhabits the void and the silence. The result, self-sufficiency. You discover that you're not lonely, the ego is lonely. Consciousness itself needs nothing. When you can sit alone for hours without reaching for stimulation, without the compulsion to be witnessed, you've converted the poison of isolation into the medicine of self-reliance. Most people never experience genuine solitude because they're terrified of what they'll find when there's no one else to reflect them back to themselves. But that terror is the guardian at the gate of freedom. Think about failure. The ego enters depression and quits. It interprets setback as evidence of unworthiness and uses it to justify giving up. The rigor performs technical debugging of the error. The result, hard lucidity. You stop taking failure personally and start treating it as data. What went wrong? Where was the flaw in execution? What variables weren't accounted for? This isn't cold detachment, it's hot precision. You care deeply about the outcome, but you've stopped letting failure mean something about your identity. When you can fail spectacularly and respond with interesting, let's analyze this, instead of I'm worthless, you've transmuted the poison of defeat into the medicine of adaptive intelligence. Consider fear. The ego flees to comfort zones and familiar patterns. It avoids, procrastinates, numbs. The rigor uses fear as maximum alert signal. The result, armor. Fear stops being the thing that stops you and becomes the thing that focuses you. When you feel terror and move toward it instead of away from it, you're performing real-time alchemy. The body screams danger. The mind generates catastrophic scenarios, and consciousness observes it all while taking the next step anyway. This isn't bravery, it's sovereignty. Bravery implies you conquered fear. Sovereignty means fear no longer has command authority. It can scream all it wants. You're the one who decides whether the body moves forward or retreats. Stop praying for pain to disappear. Start recognizing it as your most valuable asset. The person comfortable in the system will never be free because they love their silk chains. But you, bleeding in the chaos, have the incentive necessary to cut the rope. Your pain is your initiation. Don't waste it being resilient. Use it to become sovereign, to demonstrate that Siddhartha was not a passive mystic, but a radical strategist of consciousness. We must return to the Pali Canon texts that reveal his most incisive side. The sanitized Buddhism sold in wellness centers has stripped the Dharma of its surgical precision. They present the Buddha as a gentle teacher of compassion and inner peace, when the actual texts show a man who spoke with the directness of a field surgeon performing triage on dying consciousness. He didn't offer comfort, he offered diagnosis and procedure. His teaching wasn't philosophy to contemplate, it was operational protocol for dismantling the illusion of self. The quotes that follow aren't poetry, they're instructions for ego execution. For the I is the master of the I. What other master could there be? With the I fully tamed, one obtains a master who is difficult to find. Dhammapada 160. Translation: forget saviors, gurus, or algorithms. The system only has power over you while you're not master of your own house. Sovereignty is solitary conquest and technical achievement. You can read every sacred text, attend every retreat, follow every teacher, and remain enslaved if you haven't established dominance over your own impulses. The ego will gladly study liberation as a concept while remaining imprisoned in practice. Mastery of self isn't discovered through insight. It's installed through repetition under load. The I that needs taming is the conditioned self that reacts, that defends, that seeks pleasure and avoids pain. The I that does the taming is consciousness itself, which has no preferences, no narrative, no agenda except clarity. Cut down the entire forest of desire, not just one tree. From the forest of desire, fear is born. Having cut down the forest and its undergrowth, be free. Dhammapada 283. Translation: Buddha doesn't suggest gentle pruning. He orders total deforestation. It's not enough to cut one habit. You must apply sever ties at the root to the very mechanism of desiring itself. Most people approach desire management like gardening. I'll stop wanting this, but I can keep wanting that. They cut the tree, but leave the root system intact, and within months, the forest has regrown. Strategic Buddhism targets the soil itself, the belief that happiness comes from getting what you want. When you stop believing that acquisition leads to satisfaction, desire loses its grip, not because you've suppressed it, but because you've seen through its promise. The forest doesn't need to be fought. It needs to be recognized as the source of the fear that drives you. Arise, sit upright. What use is sleep to you? To those afflicted by the disease of ignorance, pierced by the arrow of suffering, how can there be sleep? Sutta Nipata 210. Translation: Comfort is hallucination for those who are dying. Buddha treats lack of lucidity as medical emergency. Rigor is not optional. It's resuscitation protocol for consciousness. The metaphor is deliberate. You are wounded, bleeding out, and instead of treating the injury, you want to rest. The arrow is still lodged in your flesh, and you're asking for a pillow. This is the condition of most human existence, suffering from the wound of ignorance about reality's nature while seeking comfort instead of cure. The teaching isn't cruel, it's urgent. If your house is on fire, the person who wakes you violently is more compassionate than the one who lets you sleep peacefully to death. In what is seen, there must be only the seen. In what is heard, only the heard. In what is sensed, only the sensed. Thus, you will not be by that. When you are not by that, you are not in that. When you are not in that, you are neither here nor beyond, nor between the two. This is the end of suffering. Bahiya Sutta, Udana 110. Translation: This is the most advanced debugging manual in history. Separate raw data from ego narrative. If you process only the data without projecting the I into it, the system loses access to your mental software. You see the tree, that's data. You don't add my tree or beautiful tree or the tree that reminds me of childhood. Just tree, raw perception, without the ego colonizing the experience. When you stop being by that, defined by experience, you stop being in that, trapped by experience. You become the space where experience occurs, not the character experiencing. This is not dissociation, it's precision. The suffering ends, not because pain stops arriving, but because there's no you for the pain to happen to. These are not philosophical musings, they are technical specifications for consciousness operation. Siddhartha wasn't building a religion, he was debugging the human condition. Every quote is a line of code designed to overwrite the malware of ego. The strategic Buddha didn't promise peace. He promised liberation through surgical removal of the belief in a separate self. That removal is violent because the ego experiences it as death. But on the other side of that death is the only thing worth calling freedom. The recognition that you were never trapped because you were never the prisoner. You were the space where the prisoner appeared. This is not a self-help challenge to make you feel good. It's stress training for your consciousness. If you complete these 7 days, you won't be the same person because you'll have begun assassinating the version of you the system controls. This isn't about building better habits or becoming more disciplined in the motivational sense. This is about proving to yourself that consciousness can override every biological demand, every social pressure, every conditioned reflex. Most people will read this and do nothing. Some will start and quit by day 2. The few who complete it will discover something the system desperately doesn't want you to know. You are not your impulses, and the body does not have veto power over the sovereign mind. Day 1. Thermal comfort, cold shower or zero air conditioning. Gain armor. The body no longer dictates your peace. When you stand under cold water and your entire nervous system screams to escape, you're face to face with the most primitive control mechanism biology has, the pursuit of comfort. Every ancestor who survived did so by seeking warmth and avoiding cold. This reflex is hardwired into your brainstem. When you override it deliberately, you're informing the entire system that consciousness is the final authority, not survival instinct. This isn't about becoming tough. It's about installing sovereignty at the physiological level. After cold water stops having command authority, social discomfort, financial stress, and emotional pain all become manageable because they're all just the same alarm system that you've already proven you can override. Day 2, mental noise. Zero music, podcasts, or videos for 24 hours. Gain, void. You inhabit the silence of your own being. Most people are so addicted to auditory stimulation that they panic within hours of silence. They'll compulsively hum, talk to themselves, or manufacture mental noise to fill the vacuum. This reveals a terrifying truth. They're afraid of their own mind. The constant stream of external audio isn't entertainment, it's anesthesia. It drowns out the voice that might ask uncomfortable questions, that might notice you're living someone else's script, that might recognize you've been avoiding yourself for decades. When you remove the noise, you meet whoever has been living in your skull this whole time. For most, that meeting is unbearable. For the few who stay, it's liberation. Day 3, social validation. Don't explain yourself. If someone judges you, remain silent. Gain authority. Your sovereignty is independent. Someone criticizes your choice, questions your judgment, demands justification. The ego's reflex is immediate. Defend, explain, prove you're reasonable. This reflex is a leash the system uses to control you. Every time you justify yourself to someone who has no authority over your life, you're confirming that their opinion matters more than your internal compass. The practice: when judgment arrives, say nothing. Feel the discomfort of being misunderstood. Feel the ego screaming to correct the record, and let it burn. On the other side of that fire is the recognition that you don't need anyone's permission, understanding, or approval to be sovereign. Your authority is self-generated, not externally validated. Day 4, cheap dopamine. Total fast from sweets or social media. Gain, alchemy, desire energy converts to pure focus. The dopamine system is the ego's favorite control mechanism. Every scroll, every sweet, every easy pleasure is the ego pressing a button that says, "I'm in charge here." Fasting from dopamine isn't about deprivation. It's about reclaiming the energy the ego wastes on trivial pleasure seeking. When you deny the craving, that energy doesn't disappear, it gets redirected. What was scattered attention becomes laser focus. What was compulsive seeking becomes voluntary action. You discover that the person constantly chasing small pleasures has no energy left for actual accomplishment. The person who can sit with desire without obeying it has the fuel to build anything. Day 5, reactivity. Hear an insult or criticism and only observe. Gain, gap. You break the karma code. Someone says something designed to wound you. The conditioned response is instant: anger, hurt, defense, counterattack. This is the stimulus-response chain that Buddhism calls karma. Action producing reaction producing action in an endless loop. The practice: when the stimulus arrives, do nothing. Observe the sensation in your body. Notice the story your mind generates. Watch the impulse to react arise and crash like a wave. In that gap between stimulus and response lives all your freedom. The person who can be insulted and remain still has broken the chain of compulsive reaction that enslaves most humans. You're no longer a puppet whose strings anyone can pull by saying the right words. Day 6, hope. Accept that nothing will improve today. Operate anyway. Gain sabotage. End of spiritual procrastination. This is the deepest cut because hope is the ego's final defense. Things will get better. I just need to wait for the right moment. Soon, I'll have time, money, energy to do the work. Meanwhile, years evaporate and the perfect conditions never arrive because perfect conditions are fiction. The practice: spend today operating as if this chaos is permanent. No rescue is coming. The situation won't improve, and still you act. You train, you work, you function, not because you hope it will lead somewhere, but because consciousness operates regardless of circumstances. When you can perform at full capacity while accepting that nothing will change, you've killed the parasite of deferred living. You've stopped waiting to start and started operating in the only moment that exists, this one. Day 7, identity. Spend 15 minutes looking in a mirror without using your name or titles. Gain, Vajra. You are the space where life occurs. Look at your face. Don't say your name. Don't reference your job, your history, your relationships, your achievements. Remove every label, every story, every identity marker. What's left? Not nothing. Consciousness observing a face. The face is temporary. The consciousness is not. When you can look at yourself and recognize that everything you call me is just appearance in awareness, you've touched the Vajra, the indestructible diamond nature that no circumstance can shatter because it exists prior to all circumstances. This isn't philosophy. This is direct perception training. You are not the character in the mirror. You are the awareness looking through those eyes. Rules of engagement. Rule 1. Execution is silence. Don't tell anyone you're doing this challenge. If you post "I'm on day 3, you've converted rigor into social validation. Rule 2. Zero resistance. When pain or boredom hits, don't fight. Use the mantra: I am the void where this sensation occurs. Rule 3. Failure, without drama. If you fail on one day, don't lament. Simply resume the protocol the next minute. Regret is another form of distraction. The goal isn't perfection. It's proving that you can override the system's control mechanisms one decision at a time. 7 days of this will rewire more neural pathways than 7 years of reading about discipline. Stop studying liberation. Start executing attachment. A diamond is nothing but carbon that endured pressure and heat nothing else could survive. Without the discomfort of the Earth's depths, it would remain dust. Your pain is your press. Rigor is what prevents you from crumbling. The marketplace wants you to believe transformation happens through gentle self-care, positive affirmations, and gradual progress. But every substance that undergoes genuine metamorphosis does so under conditions that would destroy anything not structurally capable of handling that level of force. The conscious elite understands that transformation doesn't happen in spiritual spas. It happens under extreme pressure, when the old I is forced to die because there's no longer space for it to exist. The violence of detachment is not sadism. It's basic physics of consciousness. Under normal conditions, the ego maintains its structure through constant reinforcement, validation, comfort, familiar patterns, predictable outcomes. Remove those supports gently and the ego simply finds new ones, but apply concentrated pressure, denial of comfort, withdrawal of validation, confrontation with void, and the ego has 2 options: evolve or shatter. Most people never apply sufficient pressure to themselves, so they remain forever in the state they're in, reading about transformation instead of undergoing it. The few who deliberately create pressure in their own lives by cutting attachments, denying preferences, and inhabiting discomfort discover that they're capable of metamorphosis they never suspected. The diamond was always possible. The pressure just hadn't arrived yet. Why the void weighs more than lightness. Romantic detachment promises levitation, the feeling of floating above problems. Brutal detachment delivers void, and the void is the heaviest, most unshakable state that exists because it has no pressure points. You're not a cloud the wind moves. You're the space where wind happens. Light things get blown around. Empty things can't be moved because there's nothing to push against. When you become void of illusions, you become invisible to desire-based manipulation. A person who wants nothing, expects nothing, and identifies with nothing is someone the system cannot touch. They can offer you rewards. You don't want them. They can threaten you with loss. You're not attached. They can attempt to shame you. You're not identified with reputation. The void isn't weakness. It's the ultimate defensive position. The difference between being empty and being free. Being empty doesn't mean being vague or lost. It means being empty of illusions. Every illusion you carry is a hook the system uses to control you. Want status? They'll dangle promotion. Want comfort? They'll threaten discomfort. Want to be understood? They'll manipulate through approval and rejection. Each want is a lever. When you become empty of wants, not through suppression but through seeing their illusory nature, you become operationally free. You can still engage with the world, form relationships, pursue goals, but you do so from sovereign choice, not from need. The difference is everything. The person who acts from need is always negotiating with reality. The person who acts from choice is always operating from sovereignty. Most people spend their lives trying to become something more solid, more defined, more established. They want to know who they are, to have a clear identity, to build a recognizable self. Strategic Buddhism moves in the opposite direction, toward the dissolution of solidity, the dismantling of definition, the evacuation of fixed identity. This terrifies the ego because the ego's survival depends on being someone. But consider, every form is fragile. Every identity can be attacked. Every definition can be contradicted. The only invulnerable position is formlessness. When you are nothing in particular, you cannot be damaged by anything in particular. Criticism slides off because there's no solid self to defend. Loss doesn't devastate because there was no solid possession. Failure doesn't define because there's no solid identity needing validation. The diamond isn't strong because it's ornate. It's strong because it's been compressed into the simplest, most essential form possible. Carbon arranged with absolute precision under absolute pressure. You are that carbon. The pressure is already present in your life. The question is whether you'll use it to compress into diamond or let it scatter you into dust. The great illusion is thinking detachment is loss. You're not losing anything when you cut the ropes. You're simply stopping the act of carrying the corpse of who you used to be. Every attachment is dead weight. Every identity is a portable prison. Every narrative is a chain you choose to wear every morning. The ego has convinced you that these things are precious, that without them you'd be diminished, that they constitute your substance. distance. But examine them honestly. The relationship you cling to that hasn't nourished you in years, the identity as damaged or special that justifies your limitations, the story about your past that you recite to explain your present, the comfort habits that drain your energy while providing nothing of value. These aren't treasures, they're anchors preventing you from moving. The terror of detachment comes from the fear that without these things you are nothing. But that is exactly the point. You are nothing, and nothing is the only thing the system cannot capture, cannot sell, cannot manipulate. Nothing is your Vajra, the indestructible diamond at the center of the void. Every form can be broken, every identity can be attacked, every story can be contradicted, but emptiness cannot be damaged because there's nothing there to damage. When you discover that your essential nature is not the accumulated collection of experiences, identities, and preferences you thought defined you, but rather the aware space in which all of those things appear and disappear, you've found the only security that actually exists. Think about what you're actually holding on to. The trauma that happened 20 years ago. You're not protecting a memory. You're protecting the identity you built around being traumatized. The relationship that ended. You're not mourning the person. You're mourning the version of yourself that existed in that dynamic. The comfort habit. You're not enjoying the pleasure. You're avoiding the confrontation with yourself that would happen in its absence. Every attachment, when examined closely, reveals itself as ego maintenance disguised as genuine need. You think you're holding on to things that matter. You're actually just maintaining the prison architecture because the alternative, freedom without definition, is more terrifying than captivity with identity. Most spiritual teaching will tell you to release with love, to honor what was, to gently let go. This is the ego's negotiation tactic. It wants to convert execution into ceremony, amputation into poetry. But the rope doesn't care about your gratitude. The chain doesn't need your blessing to be removed. The surgical truth is this: cut now, process later. The person who stands at the edge of detachment, preparing to let go, working up to the release, getting ready for freedom, will still be standing there decades later. The cut happens in an instant, or it doesn't happen at all. Everything else is the ego buying time, hoping you'll change your mind, betting that if it keeps you analyzing the chain, you'll never actually remove it. You are not losing anything real. You are losing illusions that you've become attached to treating as real. The story of who you were, illusion. The comfort that keeps you sedated, illusion. The validation that makes you feel seen, illusion. The hope that tomorrow will be easier, illusion. Strip them all away and what remains is not absence but presence, not weakness but sovereignty, not death but the recognition that you were never the temporary forms you've been defending. You are the space where forms appear. You are the awareness where experience occurs. You are the void that cannot be filled because it was never empty. The mantra of liberating violence: cut the bond, amputate the story, kill the consolation. I am not the cloud that floats. I am the void that encompasses all. Sever ties with what binds me. Sovereignty in what remains. What you consumed here was not consoling philosophy. It was the surgical manual of real detachment. From this moment forward, you no longer have the excuse of ignorance. You know that gentle detachment is a market lie. You know that letting go is an act of deliberate violence against the parasite you call I. You know the exact mechanism by which the ego maintains control, through comfort, validation, narrative, hope, and the compulsive need to be understood. And now you know where to cut. You now see with clarity that each rope binding you has a name: validation, biography, consolation, hope, explanation, and you know exactly where to apply the blade. The violence of detachment is not cruelty, it's emergency surgery on a consciousness dying of comfort. The anesthesia the system offers isn't mercy, it's the guarantee you'll never wake up completely. Every spiritual teaching that promises painless transformation is selling you continued imprisonment with better interior decoration. But you've seen the scalpel now. You've felt its weight in your hand. The question is no longer whether you understand the protocol, it's whether you have the sovereignty to execute it. Many will close this and seek something more positive, something that makes them feel good about remaining chained. If you do that, you confirm your position as system biomass. You choose the anesthesia, you vote for the comfortable death over the violent birth, and that's fine. Most humans live and die without ever threatening the boundaries of their cage. They mistake the familiar dimensions of their prison for the natural limits of existence. But for the few who felt the weight of the scalpel, for those who understood that freedom isn't on the other side of comfort, but under the weight of discipline you've been avoiding, for you, I say this: don't seek gentle processes, seek clean cuts. Don't wait to be ready. Apply sever ties in the middle of chaos. The world is burning and always has been. The difference is that now you have the scalpel and you know where to cut. The session is over. The amputation awaits you. Operate. You have 7 days to prove that consciousness holds sovereignty over impulse. You have 5 ropes to cut. You have 1 life to discover whether you're the prisoner or the space where the prisoner appears. Most will read this and do nothing, converting surgical protocol into philosophical entertainment. The few who act will discover what the system desperately hides. You are not your attachments, and the moment you prove that to yourself through deliberate violence against comfort, you become ungovernable. The pain you've been running from your entire life is not the enemy, it's the fuel. The void you've been filling with distraction is not absence. It's the only space where sovereignty can take root. The violence of detachment is not destruction. It's the precise removal of everything false so that what's real can finally function without obstruction. Cut the biographical fiction. Betray the conditioned preferences. Inhabit the void after the cut. Let the phantom limb of your old identity scream in the silence and discover that you can survive, no, thrive, without anything to hold on to. This is Vajra consciousness, indestructible because there's nothing there to break. If you've reached this point, something in you already recognizes that attachment is not love, it's prison. The violence of detachment is not gratuitous destruction. It's the only tool precise enough to separate you from the parasite. The ego will offer you 1,000 reasons to soften this, to make it gentle, to wait for better conditions. Every one of those reasons is the parasite negotiating for its survival. Don't negotiate. Cut. Subscribe to this channel if you're willing to trade comfort for clarity, gentle processes for surgical cuts, romantic lightness for operational emptiness. This is not a channel of comforting spirituality. It's a surgery room for consciousnesses that refuse to die anesthetized. Here we don't teach you to cope with your chains. We teach you where to cut them. We don't offer hope that tomorrow will be easier. We offer the protocols to operate in the chaos that exists right now. If you want content that makes you feel good about staying trapped, there are 10,000 channels for that. This one exists for the few who would rather bleed into freedom than sleep comfortably in captivity. Activate notifications because this work doesn't end with one video. Consciousness training is not a weekend workshop, it's daily surgical practice. Each piece of content here is another angle on the same operation, the systematic dismantling of the false self and the stabilization of sovereign awareness. The ego will attempt to convert this into entertainment, into theory, into something you consume but never apply. Your job is to treat every video as protocol, not philosophy. Watch it, then execute it. Cut one rope, inhabit the void. Prove to yourself that you can override one conditioned response, then come back for the next operation. The violence of letting go is not optional for those who refuse comfortable captivity. It's the only path, and it's walked alone, in silence, with a scalpel in your hand and the willingness to cut even when every survival instinct screams to stop. The world doesn't need more people who understand Buddhism. It needs people who apply it with surgical precision to their own consciousness and emerge on the other side ungovernable. Operate.